This is Dr. William Lester.
And I'm Mark Zasky.
And you are joining us for another edition of Agenda Earth. And on this episode, we're going to get a little bit into the Bigfoot enigma. And I know that Mark, aside from the fact that Mark has been doing some outstanding field work down in Florida, documenting the existence of these creatures, Mark's also had some personal encounters. And I was hoping to persuade him to share at least some of those with you listeners. Mark, are you up to that?
Absolutely. I think it'd be appropriate given the the circumstances. I think I'd definitely be willing to do that.
So, and it's here's the thing. We on this show are not going to entertain the question of whether or not this creature is real. We're not going to entertain that because it's the position of this show, Mark and I, that this creature is absolutely real, and we're going to proceed with our lines of investigation and inquiry and commentary on that basis.
You know, it's interesting you put it that way, because if you're if you're in the wilderness and it steps out in front of you, let me assure you, you will be confronted with that reality.
Right.
Like never before.
Right. So, I know that there are people out there probably all along the spectrum of what they think about this question. And I can assure you, this creature is real. It is real. And it doesn't matter how you want to try to fit it into the bigger picture, how you want it to lock into the scheme of things. It is real. And I don't have answers as to why it's here and why it's so anomalous. I have theories, just like a lot of you do, just as Mark does. But this creature is real. So, Mark has had encounters with this creature. And there was a time, I think Mark can stop me if I'm wrong, but Mark, there was a time when you really did not perhaps give the existence of this creature much credence.
No, yeah, I mean you're correct. I would say that in spite of having experienced in physical reality growing up circumstances involving police officers and friends of the family and people who lived on our street in an equestrian community, and then my best friend and his mother. Despite having experienced circumstances where it was very obvious that authorities and all those other people I just mentioned, those types of people, were saying that they'd had encounters or that there was this creature was involved in circumstances, whether it would be attacks on horses or a simple sighting or an encounter where something got thrown at somebody. In spite of all those things growing up, I still was very skeptical because I'd spent over the years, in particular after a few decades went by, having not seen any evidence in the field, no tracks. And I'm talking about being deep in country down here in rural Florida when it was undeveloped. So yeah, man, I was skeptical right up to the point where I had my own show. When I began Crypto Reality on KGRA, I still had no encounter yet. I had no sighting. I had my sighting wasn't until 2013. I had been screamed at, and I knew, but at the same time, there's a difference between belief requiring faith and knowing to your core, because having seen and experienced something. So yeah, man, I was skeptical.
That's another issue. People, if you are a person out there and you adhere to the philosophy, well, I don't believe it because I have to see it for myself. Okay? Listen, maybe you've never been to Japan, but I can assure you that it's there. Okay? It's there. You don't have to see something in the flesh to recognize its reality. It is perfectly acceptable to draw a conclusion based on the cumulative body of evidence. It's perfectly acceptable. It's perfectly rational. What's not rational is to dismiss that cumulative body of evidence for the sake of maintaining one's own worldview. There's a significant body of evidence that is built up over the years that leads me to the conclusion that this creature is real. I thought the creature was real before I even met Mark. There's a cumulative body of evidence. As a matter of fact, before Mark goes into his experience, there's cumulative evidence, of course, with the Native Americans that predates the arrival of the Europeans, but the European experience with Bigfoot in North America goes back to 1792. In case you think this is something that just cropped up in the 50s, it goes back to 1792. We spoke the other day on another show about the Spaniards' encounters with giants in the Aztec Empire. Well, the Spaniards were here very early, and there are accounts of their encounters with the Bigfoot creature going back to 1792. It's a long time. And as the Spaniards would do, they wrote about these encounters. Look up Captain Bruno de Esquerta, or look up Juan Vicente Güemes, Viceroy of New Spain. That's what they called what eventually would become known as Mexico. So it's not just us, it's not just folks in the 50s, it's not just the Indians, but it's the European explorers, the European newcomers on this continent. I just wanted to lay that out because I think it's important to always remind people that there is a long-standing body of evidence and information on the reality of this creature. Mark.
There's significant evidence of the Northmen having encountered the Bigfoot species, Leif Erikson himself, in a detailed account in one of his journals. That's something for all you listeners to look up as well. I think that the inference by mainstream science and the skeptical community, the debunkers, that the Patterson-Gimlin footage was the beginning of Bigfoot sightings here in the U.S. is nonsense, and it really does insult the intelligence. Which
may have been the peak.
Yeah, it definitely peaked. She definitely peaked right there. That's for sure. Well, she's peaking again. I got news for you. She's peaking again. But yeah, man. I look at the situation like it wasn't for the day that I got. It wasn't for the day that I took this investigation into physical reality by choice. Nothing that's happening right now would be happening, and it's only because I made the choice to get in my vehicle and go for myself to interview a couple of park officials that I ever had my first encounter, which was vocal only. I didn't see it, but it was enough to say. To get me questioning, okay, would there actually be a giant homeless man in this jungle right now? Would there actually be a giant homeless man?
Biggest hobo? Yeah,
and our hobos, giant hobos, prone to smashing and eating snails from out of a canal with rocks. The entire situation, the entire circumstances. I got so heated about what happened because I'd interviewed park officials here at a place called Grassy Waters and Grassy Waters Preserve, and there have been reports in there. There was a BFRO report involving two rangers and a guy and a lady, and it was interesting because for as long as I can remember, you could canoe through these areas that are public land trusts at will. Well, they had changed the policy for some reason. that you had to have a ranger guide while you went into these places. If you were gonna leave the dock and enter the swamp area and go through this marsh, this grassy waters preserve, you had to have a ranger as a guide, a park employee with an official, authoritative title, is the way I'll put it. Well, these people came from Okeechobee, and this guy brought his own canoe because it didn't say that anywhere on the website, and he was pissed when they said that, but they eventually conceded. They walked down the dock to where the canoes are at to rent the canoe because, can't use yours. And there's this guy standing across 100 and so yards away at a tree line who's gigantic and covered in hair, and he's eating from the base of these cypress trees. That right there prompted me to go try to find out if I could find those two rangers, and these people were adamant that they didn't keep records of this sort of thing, and I had already started to make phone calls, and talking to a couple different state parks. I had determined that there was definitely something going on with the reports themselves that were given to the officials at these parks. Because on one hand, I had an employee telling me that it was of no significance, and they wouldn't take reports like this, and I said, knowing full well that I'm handed a wildlife card every time I enter these parks to, if you see a squirrel, if you see an alligator, write it down. But a 9-foot hominoid is of no significance, is the way they were portraying this, and so I had gotten somebody to actually acknowledge that they had. This is quotes. We have someone on this. You don't need to worry about it. That's what I was told. And this guy was a park director of the Big Cypress Preserve. Yeah, man. So I was completely floored by that, man. Completely floored by that.
Mark, just like you've been talking about your personal experience with Bigfoot and how you now understand that it is real and, demonstrably real. I had a similar situation like that with respect to UFOs, in which my experience was such that there was no room left for doubt after the experience.
That's a good way to put it, man. That's a good way to put it.
It changed me. It changed me because you can have an idea about certain things, but until it's looking you right in the face and it's unavoidably a actual part of your reality, it's not the same.
No, it's not.
And so I say the same thing about flying saucers that we say about Bigfoot. I don't care what you think about it. They're real. I don't know why they're here. I don't know where they're from. I don't know what the agenda is, but they're real. I saw one years ago when I was doing investigating for MUFON. In 1998, the late 90s, 98, 99, UFOs were buzzing the skies of Georgia. Reports daily, up and down the highway, all over the state. Georgia's a pretty big state when you try to cover it. Okay? And there are parts of this state, folks, you can drive down a highway, you can look to the left, and as far as you can see, there's nothing but trees. And you look to the right, and there's nothing you see except trees. And you look straight ahead and straight behind you, and you just see one stretch of highway. And it's not fun. But that's what we did, going up and down the highways of this state, investigating these UFOs. Well, on one such occasion, we were told by an eyewitness what time the UFOs would show up. That's how regular they were.
Mm.
They'll be here around 8.
Oh, man.
So, obviously, we're going to hang around till 8, right?
Damn right.
So, we're at this individual's home. And almost on cue, you see this light approaching from the perspective of these people's backyard. Now, mind you, we are in the front yard. This object gets closer and closer, and as it gets closer, it comes into better focus. And you see that it is a very large triangle, a black triangle. I would say about 100 feet from tip to tip, a perfect equilateral triangle. Now, there's no sound. On the bottom of this object, in the exact center, was a red light. It was not flashing, it was just a solid red light. Now, I see that the object is flying just over rooftop level of this house. This is how close it is, folks. Just over the rooftop. So I wanted to do a little litmus test. I said, now, if this thing is real, and that light is real, and I'm looking at a real object, that red light is going to hit off the roof of that house because of the proximity of it, because it's that low. And that's exactly what happened. As the object moved over the house, the roof of the house, I saw the red light strike the roof of the house as you would expect it to. It flew over the roof of the house, and it flew directly over our heads. I could have hit it with a rock. I could have hit it with a rock. It flew over our heads. It flew across the street, and across the street was a wooded area. It flew over this wooded area exactly at treetop level. Exactly at treetop level. Making no noise, drifting until it was out of sight. We speculated later that it was flying at such a low altitude either because it was looking for something or because it wanted to avoid radar. But the point is, UFOs are not up for debate, except for the particulars about who they are, what they want, why they're here, etc. But are they real? Hell yeah.
That's incredible. That's probably one of the most incredible UFO reports I've ever heard. And that light thing immediately. It's funny you said something about I could have threw a rock at it, because I was thinking I probably would have tried to throw a rock at it. But the fact that the light wasn't blinking, and right, like you said, it's just general proximity to ground level. Right. To me, it sounds like it could have been an infrared light to see in the dark, and maybe they were looking for something.
And and the other thing, how can an object that's 100 feet long float through the air and not make any noise?
Well, that's obviously alternative propulsion.
Yeah. Obviously, yes. There's no octane going on in there.
No.
Yeah. But anyway, but that's just it was a fascinating encounter, and like Mark said, I could have thrown a rock at it, but I couldn't take my eyes off of it. Because I realized that I was seeing something that was extraordinary. And, I don't want to hear any of this stuff about it was an all, secret government aircraft. Really? Flying around in a subdivision at treetop level because they don't want anybody to see them? Let me tell you something, folks. When you don't want anybody to see you, you don't fly at treetop level.
In a subdivision.
Because that's what it was, straight up what it was. So this was being piloted by somebody who did not care whether or not they were seen. So, these things are real. People have ghost stories. And when you're confronted with something like that, you know that it's real. A very famous paranormal investigator named Ed Warren was famous in his lectures with the following quote: "You must understand that the fairy tales, by and large, are true." And that was his own unique little cute way of saying, hey, listen, yeah, it's real. This is real. It's been relegated to the realm of folklore and mythology, legend, superstition, but some of it's real. This creature that goes by innumerable names that here in North America we generally refer to as Bigfoot is real. It is real. And it's real in spite of officialdom's manic, neurotic insistence that it isn't. Their public insistence that it isn't. In private, they think something quite different. But it is real. It is real. So, Mark, before I went into this UFO diatribe, Mark was talking about his experience with this creature in Florida. Can you piggyback any more on that? Because what I want the listeners to really take hold of here is how, you are not just doing field research because you want to prove to everybody that this creature is real. You know that it's real. Is that right?
100%. I can lay out about 100 scenarios that actually happened either to just me or both Melanie and me in the last 17 months of intensive field research. I mean, we wouldn't be going back over and over and over into these areas if it was fruitless. The same areas.
Right.
There's no reason for me to go somewhere if it's not productive. And that's not just true with research. That's true with anything in my life. I believe in the economy of common sense. I mean, I'm not wasting my time. I'm not here on planet Earth to waste my time chasing an apparition that's not real. It's not happening.
But you are a cryptozoologist. I would even be so bold as to say you're a crypto researcher in general. I mean, cryptozoology is, I think, your mainstay.
Yeah, it is.
But I mean, this is your full-time vocation. So there is no incentive for you to waste time and mess around here.
No, my job is to provide evidence of the impossible, according to what people now view, the general public. Like, we have thousands, we may even have millions, and at this point, with the popularity of the subject in the last 12 to 14 years, and the major channels that have put this type of stuff on the radar by doing these documentaries, and honestly, my reasons, I have my thinking on that stuff for why that was happening. But the bottom line is this subject. There's millions of people who now at this point believe that this stuff is not only possible, but it's probable that it's real. There are, and that's but if you look at the grand scheme of things, there's 8 billion people on planet Earth. Millions of people is a drop in the bucket. And we're not getting to them. And so the way I look at it is from a very common sense point of view. I don't try to complicate anything. I say to myself, I asked myself, in the beginning of this, how are we going to do this? Obviously, I've been writing a blog on field research, and it was based solely on eyewitness testimony. And so in starting this entire process, what am I going to do? Ask mainstream science for advice? So what I did was, what they think. So what I did was I went to the source. If you don't want a rotten apple, you go to the tree. And so that's what I did. And the source, in this case, for Bigfoot information, the only source that was really available was eyewitnesses. And in order to do that, you have to begin to put a certain amount of stock in what these people were saying. Of course, we've all heard that eyewitness, reports are remarkably consistent. That's a common term, or a common phrase rather, that's used on these shows. But in actually physically going into the field investigating, you have to put stock in it on a new level. And so that's what really was required. And people ask me on a daily basis. Melanie and I get hundreds of emails a week. We're in communication with really thousands of people on a monthly basis. And these people all ask the same thing: how are you doing this? How can this be? And it's like, well, first of all, conversely, or a better way to put it would be paradoxically, if you want to do something, you really have to actually do it. I know that that's like an unpopular concept these days, and that living vicariously through the actions and behaviors of others is very popular. But the bottom line is you can't find Bigfoot if you're not looking for him. And that's really what it is. And so we find invariably that there's repetitive circumstances in the field. You will find tracks. You will find tracks. You will find tracks. But not if you listen.
Oh, and here's another thing too, folks. Some of you internet Sherlock Holmes types. You're not doing Bigfoot research by going online and reading up various cases and trying to pick apart the elements of the case. You're not doing Bigfoot research.
Yeah, that's not Bigfoot research, man.
Yeah,
that's personal. That's a personal quest for comfortability in an uncomfortable situation.
Right. They go through these various cases that have all been, chronicled online, and they try to see if there's something there they can pick apart and seize on to demonstrate something. I've seen it all too often. And they think they're doing Bigfoot research because they're showing, well, this case is good, this case isn't. Aside from the little caveat that everybody's entitled to their own opinion, which is absolutely true, but I would tag on to the end of that all opinions aren't created equal.
Yeah, some of those you might want to keep to yourself.
Yeah.
Well, that kind of goes in with, to bring things into the encounter realm. Okay. I had an encounter in the field with Melanie. Actually, we had an encounter in the field together at night in the area that I had my sighting. Actually, 1,000 yards from where I saw the big gray Bigfoot with the human head of hair in 2013, about 1,000 yards from there. We'd been conducting research in that area for over a year at that time. And we had determined through tracking and other physical signs, just where you will track one of these things, and they have a tendency, based on what we're seeing, that as they walk along, and they walk in a it looks like they're walking on a tightrope for the most part. Their feet are placed right in front of the other. They're not staggered like a regular human. And this is not because they're on a very thin trail. Because a human will walk through there and have a tendency to try to keep their feet inside that trail. But let me assure you, they walk where they want to walk. They walk where they want to walk. They walk through things that you would not think of walking through. And they blaze the trail. This is the difference. I'm on his trail. He created it. There's a very big difference. Now, in tracking these animals and in these physical signs, what I was getting at right there was they have a tendency to walk along, and just like you would, they reach for things. There's a branch that's at hand level on the left-hand side. Now, mind you, it's at my waist. And it's broken off. There's a sapling over here that's bent down and twisted. You can see an expulsion out the side where it bent down. where it's been bent down. You can see bark that's run off. You can see where it didn't let go immediately and kept its grip on the sapling and slid up, and you can see where it was holding on tight, and the young shoots of the plant were pulled off at the tip of it. We're talking about seeing a story in the signs that you find. And so we had tracked these guys in here so many times. I'd already seen it there. A retired police officer saw it 300 yards from where I saw it, 1,000 yards from this exact spot that Melanie are now arriving at. It was exactly 7 days before Halloween, 2015 at 11 p.m. And as we approached the area very quietly in the pitch black, it was a new moon, and with the new moon, it was very dark, and we had headlamps, but I absolutely refused to have any light source at all until we got to this particular spot that we call the crossroads. And we're creeping up to the crossroads, and we're approaching the area, and instantaneously, as we get within, I would say, 40 feet of the crossroads, the hair on the back of both of our necks and on my arms, I have some hairy arms, my hair standing up. Chills are running up my spine because both of us hear movement on both sides of us, off the sides of this levee in this thick bush, and up in front of us there's a crossroads. So there's a four corner, and the levee is two roads that intersect, but there are four corners, and you're on top of a hill, and down off this hill is thick bush and in fact swamp. And it wasn't 10 seconds from the time we set foot on that first corner looking to where this huge walking was, that an entire tree was knocked down. And then we ain't even been there 10 seconds. And you want to talk about ice water flowing through your veins? I mean, you can't even see because the infrared light from your camera and the screen you're looking at is blinding you, first of all. And the screen from the iPad she's using is blinding her. It's pitch black, and that's the only light source. They're looking right at our faces, which are well lit by the camera equipment we're using. And I can tell you right now, I was my heart was coming through my chest. This thing moved off so quickly and with such force through this area that I began to feel comfortable suddenly. And I thought, well, okay, let's investigate the area that it just took off from. Well, there was still one there, and it became very obvious as I approached the area. Now, this is one of the encounters and one of the situations that I do not like to discuss. And the only reason I'm going into it is because I can't explain it. So, you know what I mean? It's like, I as long as it's unexplainable, I can still talk about it because I don't like to think that they have any supernatural abilities. I'm still a victim of uncomfortability in this as well, in the programming, all that stuff. I've been programmed to think that people who think like that there's something abnormal about them. Now, I don't know everything there is to know about the Bigfoot species, but I know everything there is to know about my research. I keep an accurate journal, both in film and in print, and of every single circumstance that comes on, that we come across or that we're involved in, and all of the evidence that we find. And I can tell you that this particular situation, I have no explanation for. I took 20 steps forward as the tree was being knocked down, and it was obvious that thing was leaving the area because it was stomp, going through the bushes. Treetops were moving. I'm going, oh my God. And I'm trying to catch this on film. We got audio of it. You can see us pointing the camera in the direction, and the tree cracks and it gets knocked down, and you can hear it moving off. Pitch black. I move over towards the area, and before I settled my shot to look in the direction, the exact direction, in the exact spot where this thing was, in the direction it was heading, I suddenly was hit, and my camera, with some type of an energy. The exact moment that my camera starts buzzing,
Yeah.
and the shot goes blurry, and you can hear electrical interference. The camera, there's a shocking kind of sound. I was hit.
We got a Bigfoot.
I was hit in my chest by a nausea and a vibration is the way I'll describe it. That felt like it was electricity. I felt like I was getting tased, and to where I almost vomited. And you can hear me on the film going oh like this, and my heart started palpitating to where I almost had a heart. I thought I was going to have a heart attack. I'm 46 years old, and I have, I'm thinking, I don't know what's going on right here. I was in such a state of shock that not even 10 to 15 seconds after it stopped, just instantly, I caught something in my camera, and it shot down into the bush, and I just pointed to Melody and said, "Go!" And she had seen it too, so we took off running after it. Like I was in such shock about what was going on, and in the moment that I disregarded everything that happened to me just now. It was like almost like your adrenaline just had you. It just had me. You know what I mean? And of course, Melanie was in the same boat I was in, not with the electrical interference, but with the you're just so much adrenaline is going on right now. You're just in stay alive mode in case anything jumps out of the bush. You know what I mean? And we were in a state of mind. Our state of mind was so, I look back on it. Oh, and we stayed there for another 25 to 30 minutes and shot. And the ground was being pounded on, and they were growling from the bush. And it, I put stock for months in the fact that was their hunting area. Those crossroads, I'd filmed several different species of game coming through there on game cameras. I filmed coyotes and many, many deer and hogs in that particular area coming through that area, at that crossroads. And it just was, it was incredible to be in that situation and catch it all on film. It's in one of our episodes. And I look at that situation, and it reminded me of an early situation where, because I can't explain it, of Melanie and I missing time in this same exact area. I have no explanation for how this happened to me or my camera equipment.
Okay. So, you've been talking about this kind of electric interference and messing with the cameras and things. And I'm thinking, and again, in the absence of, hard information, we can theorize, we can speculate, we can make reasonable guesses. It's possible that this creature, because we don't know very much, we don't know anything about its evolutionary track. We don't know anything about its genome. It's possible that this creature may have some kind of bioelectric defense mechanism that makes it able to somehow generate fields of energy, electromagnetic fields of energy, to literally jam the signal. Becomes harder to see, becomes harder to detect, becomes harder to hear, becomes harder to photograph, becomes harder to record. We have other examples of this kind of sophisticated defense mechanism elsewhere in nature.
That's what I like. That's one of the first things that I did when I started to think about this was see if there was a corollary.
Yeah, there's a corollary. Listen. I'm going to always preface things by saying there's a lot about this creature we don't know. We know that it's real, but it doesn't come out of the Twilight Zone, and they don't come off of spaceships.
I agree.
Okay, so there are a few research rules, or well, you know what? I think of them more as philosophical approaches to research. One of the ones I think you have to adhere strictly to is do not try to answer one mystery with another.
Mm.
And that's what a lot of people do. And one of the and I think it's a mistake because I think it pushes you further and further away from the actual reality of it. Because researchers have a hard time nailing down the exact nature and disposition of this creature. They try to explain that difficulty by saying it's paranormal. No, it's just that we don't have sufficient manpower and resources to get this thing confirmed and cataloged. You got one guy out over here. You got, Mark's down in Florida. You got these other people over here. Whatever. That's all it is.
That's it.
Do not try to answer one mystery by layering another mystery on top of it, because that's just the same thing as we talked about people trying to fit these things into their particular religious beliefs. No matter what the truth is, you just want to make it fit.
Yeah, I think one of the most important things that I do, and that Melanie and I incorporate into our research, and one of the primary reason that we have taken the stance that we have in the Bigfoot Researchers Journal with the things that we say about the species is that I apply that really basic scientific principle of Occam's razor. Yeah. I start with the simplest explanation and try to work around that and see what goes on. And it's just over all of this time, with all the time we've spent having circumstances, catching them on film, my sightings, everything, it hasn't pushed any further. It hasn't had to. Every single thing that we see on film, all of the behaviors, everything can be explained very simply and very naturally, with the exception of the circumstances that we just gave. But I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I believe, based on what I'm seeing in other aspects of the existence of this creature, that it will be explained through physiological studies. It's a natural ability. I look at everything that we have seen, and it does nothing but point to predatory behavior. It is very simple. Very simple. You look at the average modern human hunter, and you will see the exact same behavior you see in the Sasquatch species. Obviously, not to the same degree. But these human hunters don't have to live there. So it's quite different. But the bottom line is we're looking at predatory behavior. It's not elusive because they don't want to be seen by you. It's not elusive because you're not that freaking important. You know what I mean? The bottom line is what's important is meat. And that's what controls the existence of the Florida Sasquatch in my research areas. That's what controls it. And that's coming off of 17 months and thousands of hours sitting in the bushes with these things. And I can tell you, you'd be hard-pressed here in my areas to prove me wrong.
Another thing, people have to be aware of, we don't have very much to compare this to. If you want to, you can compare it to some other primates, gorillas, orangutans, chimpanzees. But we're dealing with a sample size of one. It's unprecedented. There's nothing else to compare this to. It's unknown. It's unpredictable.
Yeah, if I had one in my garage, somebody told me that. I told them I'm going to use that from time to time. I don't have one in my garage, man. You know what I mean? And I can tell you that when you get in the bushes with these guys, you will see, a very shy, yes, very shy creature, but a creature that is absolutely all about stealth, all about silence, all about like this thing where they're making all kinds of noise and all that. The only time that we've seen them make a ton of noise is when they're tearing through the bushes after something. We don't get a ton of audio. Like, I don't know, man. I think that the fact that they're so silent most of the time. So, I look at a lot of I agree with you on this, man. I think that people have a tendency to try to reach for answers when the answers don't immediately present themselves. And the bottom line is these are areas, the Sasquatch lives in areas that we are not comfortable in the first place. You can say you love the woods all you want. You're not giving up your homestead to go live out there in a sleeping bag.
Nope.
And we're talking about an uncomfortability that really, I think, speaks volumes to the obvious removal of mankind from these areas. I think that I go in the area here in South Florida with Melanie, and at times it is not uncommon for us to be covered by 20 mosquitoes in 20 different places at any given moment. And have to cover ourselves and just, you name it, man. I've got chemicals. I've got, you have to protect yourself. And really, it's quite the opposite with the Sasquatch. So when I'm in those areas, I'm uncomfortable. Well, I'm focused on about 31 different things because I'm uncomfortable, first of all. To get to observation becomes difficult, is my point. And so you're there and you're sidetracked and you finally figure out ways to become comfortable, to sit and observe. But the bottom line is if you're sitting and observing in an area where there are no Sasquatch, you have like a zero chance of determining any kind of accurate information, let alone documenting it, So to find the group and then be in close proximity and then actually become comfortable in the environment, and that's not to say that you can't, but on top of that, you have the Sasquatch. You're not alone. This thing is gigantic. So there are a lot of different things going on at any given time with Melanie and I when we're in the field. And I absolutely refuse to jump to any conclusion. Melanie will tell you this. I have dismissed more. I've destroyed occurrences in conversation with her because I do not wish to jump to any conclusions about this. And until I can safely document something, I mean, the only thing I've been able to, I'm going to just say it this way. What I have documented is something that clearly demonstrates a very serious need to stay hidden so that it can eat. There is a ton of plant life it can just munch on, but plant life will not sustain this creature. We have seen thousands of hog tracks and thousands of deer tracks in these areas, but very few hogs. In one area, I've never seen a hog. I have captured these Bigfoot on film dozens of times, and I am yet to document a single hog. Hog tracks, yes, but you never see a hog in this area. It's like they may step out of the bushes, but I bet they get ganked instantaneously. You know what I mean?
Well, I think too with this creature, you will see very few creatures as well integrated into their habitat as this creature, which is another, I feel, explanation for their incredible elusiveness.
Absolutely.
They're so well integrated. They are almost, living camouflage, living stealth.
Yeah, well, you say, to add something to that, to reinforce it, they are as comfortable in a saw palmetto, laying around on top of each other, legs over here, rubbing on this one's got his arm around that one, in a tight-knit group, laying in a bush on the ground with venomous snakes. And that's another thing. in the areas that they do occupy, you see very few venomous snakes. I've yet to see one in Area 4 where we film all of our Bigfoot. Hundreds of non-venomous species are everywhere, but the venomous species are virtually, you will not see it. You just don't see them. You step outside of that area and you'll see them. The water moccasins are all over it. It's like the water moccasins have evacuated the area. But they're as comfortable laying in a bush as you are laying in your bed, sucking on a cocktail. Bottom line.
And I can assure all of you listeners that that is a representation of extreme comfort.
Oh man, yeah. You get out in these areas here in South Florida, and it does not. Let me explain something to you. I know you're from the South, so you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
But even this short distance from southern Georgia to South Florida, you pull up to our research area and you open the car, and before you get out of the vehicle, there's 25 mosquitoes the size of a quarter inside the car. This is a swamp, man. This is not comfortable at all. And I'm telling you right now, man, this is an inhospitable place for us. And these guys just have nothing that phases them. Nothing. And if you look at the behaviors, they are not. I mean, I've seen one in action and they can move fast. But almost every single time we catch them on film, they're laying around or they're peeking through a bush in slow motion. They're not swatting mosquitoes. They're not, you know what I mean? These things are not bothered. The fact that I consider it a fact. It's a truth. It's a truth. I'll put it that way.
Okay.
It's a truth that these things appear to have been here, and I mean here in South Florida and in this continent, on this planet, a lot longer than we have.
Well, yeah, I've always thought that.
Well, yesterday you said something in a conversation. I think actually we were recording when you said something about you mentioned the possibility of seeding, the Earth being seeded. That was your theory, and I think that's what you're getting at with hominids. And I think that I'm seeing the results of that in my research. All that this thing does is, in studying this guy in the bush, is make you question who you are. I've said that so many times. Why am I so uncomfortable here? If I evolved here.
Well, that and you know we talked about the Mars connection, the seeding connection, the Anunnaki connection, and again we're going to try to provide cogent, clear theories, but the Sumerians talk about the quote 7 creations of man. Almost in the context of doing this trial and error. Okay, this one didn't work. That didn't work. That didn't quite get us where we want to get. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that kind of thing. Well, this one maybe doesn't understand how to properly use fire. Or this one, okay, now he can make stone tools. Or he's smart enough to retreat into the caves to provide shelter and warmth. I've also listen.
Well, that's the fossil record right there for man.
Fossil record, right? Well, see, here's the thing. People always make faces when I say this. I think still to this day that the single greatest technological accomplishment of mankind was the use of fire. And people balk at that because they look around at the world we have today and our technology today and what all it does for us. But what our technology does for us is enhanced luxury. The use of fire is the single most important technological breakthrough in the human race. Why? Because it allowed us to retreat into a cave which had heretofore been inhospitable.
Darkness.
The cave was dark. Now it isn't.
And that's everything.
That's everything. Not only that, now that the cave is lit up, all of those predators are going to stay away. That saber-toothed cat's not coming around that fire. Okay? Those type of things, those dangerous predators of prehistory are not coming. So the cave is lit, and the cave is now warm. So you're not subject to temperature extremes. Now you can cook your food. You're cooking your meat now. And on and on and on. So every way that a piece of progress or a technological breakthrough can enhance human existence, it's fire. Fire does it.
Yeah, that's good, man.
If you see what I'm saying? So
oh yeah.
If we don't have fire, we don't survive as a species to develop the wheel or the chariot or bronze tools or papyrus, the first kind of paper. And then you just kind of go up the chart from there.
Well, I mean, it also correlates to them. They obviously, I mean, based on what we're seeing, and that's all I base my opinion on. I don't listen to anybody. I don't listen to opinions about any of that stuff. I'm in the field, and what I see is what I present, and that's it. And if I can't get it on film, I don't bother commenting on it. And at the end of the day, these guys aren't using fire, and look where they're at. I mean, you take it down to its basest element. No fire, you live in a bush. No fire, you live in a bush.
Have you had any notion or any level of evidence at all that they utilize simple tools, rudimentary tools?
Absolutely.